The ballroom was already filled with guests when Kate arrived. Diamonds glittered under the chandeliers, silk gowns swept across marble floors. The annual charity gala was one of the most important events of the season, and everyone who mattered was there. But as Kate stepped through the entrance, conversations faltered. Heads turned. Eyes widened. It wasn't her dress, though the midnight blue velvet gown was stunning. It wasn't her hair, perfectly styled in soft waves. It was what hung around her neck. A sapphire necklace. Deep blue stones surrounded by diamonds, arranged in an intricate Victorian setting. The kind of piece that belonged in a museum. Or on a queen, because that's exactly what it was. The necklace had belonged to Diana, Princess Diana, Kate's late mother-in-law. It had been locked away in the royal vault for years, rarely seen, almost forgotten by the public. But not by those who remembered, and certainly not by Camilla. Before we continue, if you love stories about real moments that changed everything, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens next. Kate moved through the room with her usual grace, greeting guests, smiling warmly. But there was something different about her tonight. A quiet confidence. A statement being made without words. Near the far wall, standing beside a group of dignitaries, Camilla spotted her. Their eyes met across the crowded room. Camilla's smile froze. Just for a second. But a second was enough. Standing near the doorway in his crisp red uniform, Royal Guard officer James Mitchell noticed it too. He had served the family for 12 years. He knew how to read faces, how to sense tension, before it erupted into something visible. And what he saw on Camilla's face in that moment told him everything. Shock. Then calculation. Then something that looked almost like fear. Kate continued across the room, accepting a glass of champagne from a server. She laughed at something a duchess said. She posed for photographs. But the necklace caught every flash. Every light it was impossible to ignore. Camilla excused herself from her conversation and moved toward the powder room. Her steps were measured, controlled. But Officer Mitchell saw. Her hand trembled slightly as she smoothed her dress. The message had been received, and the night had only just begun. Inside the powder room, Camilla stood before the gilded mirror. Her own necklace, elegant, expensive, perfectly appropriates, suddenly felt inadequate. She touched it briefly, then let her hand fall. She had been at events with Kate hundreds of times. They had navigated difficult moments before, maintained appearances, played their roles. But this was different. Diana's necklace wasn't just jewelry. It was a symbol, a reminder, a ghost that Camilla had spent years trying to move past, and Kate had just summoned it back into the room for everyone to see. A staff member entered tentatively. "Ma'am, they're about to begin the speeches." Camilla nodded, composing herself. "I'll be right there." Returned to the ballroom, her mask firmly back in place. But Officer Mitchell, positioned near the main entrance, watched her scan the room until she found Kate again. Kate was speaking with a group of young entrepreneurs, genuinely engaged in their conversation about the charity's work with underprivileged children. The sapphires at her throat caught the light with every gesture. The speeches began. A series of dignitaries praised the charity, announced donation totals, thanked sponsors. Then it was Kate's turn. She stepped up to the podium, poised and radiant. The audience quieted. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she began, her voice clear and warm. "This charity has always been close to my heart, because it represents something. I deeply believe in that every child deserves opportunity, support, and hope." She paused, her hand unconsciously touching the necklace. "I'm wearing something special tonight. A piece that belonged to someone who understood the power of compassion better than anyone I've known. Someone who taught me, even though we never met, that true service means seeing people as they are and loving them anyway." The room was completely silent now. Diana believed that the greatest privilege we have is the ability to help others. And tonight, in her honor, I'm pleased to announce that we've exceeded our fundraising goal by £2 million. Applause erupted. People rose to their feet. Kate smiled, gracious and humble. As cameras flashed, but Officer Mitchell kept watching Camilla. She was clapping, smiling, playing her part perfectly. But her jaw was tight. Her eyes were fixed on Kate with an intensity that spoke volumes. This wasn't just about a necklace anymore. This was about legacy. About who would be remembered, about whose influence would define the future. And Kate had just drawn a line. After the speeches, guests mingled over dinner. Kate was surrounded constantly, everyone wanting a closer look at the necklace. Wanting to share memories of Diana, wanting to bask in the connection to history, Camilla maintained her distance. Circulating among different groups, charming as always, but she never approached Kate directly. Officer Mitchell watched it all unfold like a chess match, each move deliberate, each position calculated. By the end of the evening, as guests began to depart, Kate passed near where Camilla was standing. They were forced to acknowledge each other. "Lovely speech," Camilla said, her voice perfectly modulated. "Thank you," Kate replied. "It's an important cause. The necklace is quite striking. I thought tonight was the right occasion for it." Their eyes held for a moment. Two women, two very different ideas about what the monarchy should be. "It suits you," Camilla said finally. Kate smiled. "I'm glad you think so." She moved on, leaving Camilla standing there. And Officer Mitchell saw something flicker across the older woman's face. Respect, perhaps. Or maybe just the realization that Kate was no longer the quiet, accommodating daughter-in-law who could be managed. She had become something else entirely. Asterisk, asterisk, the next morning. The headlines exploded. Every major newspaper featured Kate on the front page. The sapphire necklace prominent in every photograph. Kate honors Diana with stunning tribute. Princess wears Diana's historic sapphires at gala. A mother's legacy. Kate keeps Diana's memory alive. Social media erupted with commentary. Millions of people shared photos, memories, opinions. Diana's fans celebrated. Fashion websites analyzed every detail. The public couldn't get enough. Inside the palace, the mood was more complicated. Camilla's private secretary briefed her over morning tea. "The response has been overwhelming, ma'am. Mostly positive. Very positive, actually. Mostly. There are some comparisons being made between you and the late princess. Some commentators are suggesting that Kate's choice was deliberate," Camilla said quietly. She set down her teacup and looked out the window. The same gardens she had gazed upon so many times, seeking clarity, seeking peace. "What would you like us to do?" Her secretary asked carefully. "Nothing. We do nothing." Responding would only amplify it. "Very wise, ma'am." But wisdom didn't make it easier. That afternoon, Kate attended a children's hospital visit. She wore a simple blue dress, pearl earrings, no statement jewelry. But reporters still asked about the necklace. "It was a privilege to wear it," Kate said warmly. "Diana's legacy of compassion continues to inspire me every day." The video clip went viral within hours. Officer Mitchell, off duty but following the news like everyone else in the palace, understood what he had witnessed. This wasn't just about one night. It was a shift. A changing of the guard, so to speak. Kate wasn't competing with Camilla. She was stepping around her entirely, connecting directly with the public through the one person whose memory still held. It was more power than any living royal. It was brilliant. And it was dangerous. 3 days after the gala, a private meeting was called. Senior advisors, communications staff, and both women. The conference room was formal, temperature-controlled, designed to prevent emotion from overheating into conflict. "We need to discuss the narrative," the senior communications director began carefully. "The gala generated unprecedented engagement, which is positive. But we need to ensure we're presenting a unified front moving forward." Kate sat calmly, hands folded in her lap. Camilla's posture was equally composed. But Officer Mitchell, stationed outside the door, could hear the tension and the pauses between words. "I wasn't aware that wearing a family heirloom required committee approval," Kate said evenly. "It doesn't," the director said quickly. "Of course it doesn't. We're simply suggesting that for future high-profile events, coordination might be beneficial." Kate finished. "To whom?" Camilla spoke then, her voice measured. "Kate, no one is questioning your right to wear Diana's jewelry. But surely you can understand that such choices have implications." Yes, Kate agreed. They do. They remind people why we're here. Why any of this matters? And you think I need that reminder? The question hung in the air. Kate met her gaze directly. I think we all do. Sometimes, the meeting continued for another 30 minutes, but nothing was truly resolved. Protocols were suggested. Coordination was encouraged. Everyone nodded and agreed to keep communication open. But Officer Mitchell, who had seen countless royal meetings over the years, knew the truth. The rules had changed, and there was no going back. 2 weeks passed. The fervor over the necklace gradually faded from headlines, replaced by other news, other scandals, other stories. But within the palace, something had fundamentally shifted. Staff members noticed it first. The way Kate and Camilla no longer shared small talk in hallways, the way their schedules were carefully arranged to minimize overlap, the way certain meetings now required mediators. Officer Mitchell noticed it too during his shifts. The body language, the careful distance maintained, the smiles that never quite reached the eyes. One afternoon, he overheard a conversation he probably wasn't meant to hear. He was stationed in the corridor, outside the Queen Consort's study, when Camilla's closest advisor arrived. The door wasn't fully closed. The focus groups are clear, the advisor said. Kate's favorability ratings have increased 17% since the gala, particularly among younger demographics and women. And mine? Camilla asked. A pause. Steady. But the comparisons are becoming more frequent. To Diana. Yes, ma'am. Silence followed. Then Camilla's voice quieter now. I've spent years building credibility. Years proving that I belong here. And one necklace undoes all of it. Not undoes, the advisor corrected gently. But it does remind people of a different era. A different vision, Camilla said. Kate isn't honoring Diana. She's aligning herself with Diana, positioning herself as the true inheritor of that legacy. Perhaps. There's no perhaps about it. She's brilliant, actually. I would have done the same thing at her age. The admission surprised Officer Mitchell. There was no anger in Camilla's voice, only a kind of weary respect. What would you like to do? The advisor asked. What can I do? Fight a ghost? Compete with a memory everyone has idealized? No, I have to find another way. The conversation moved to other topics, and Officer Mitchell returned his attention to the hallway. But the words stayed with him. This wasn't a simple rivalry. It was something more complex. Two women trying to define their place in an institution that had very specific ideas about who mattered and who didn't. That evening, Kate hosted a small reception for literacy volunteers. Officer Mitchell was assigned to security. He watched her work the room with effortless grace, making each person feel valued, remembered. Important, she wore no significant jewelry tonight. Just simple gold earrings and her wedding ring. But she didn't need the sapphires anymore. The statement had been made. The position had been claimed near the end of the evening. One of the volunteers, an elderly woman, approached Kate with tears in her eyes. Thank you for wearing Diana's necklace at the gala, she said. My daughter loved her. She died 5 years ago, and seeing you honor her memory, it meant everything. Kate took the woman's hands. Your daughter's love for reading changed children's lives. That's the real legacy we're all part of. Officer Mitchell watched the exchange and understood something profound. Kate wasn't using Diana's memory as a weapon. She was using it as a bridge, connecting the past to the present, giving people permission to remember, to feel, to hope again. It was leadership, real leadership. And it was something Camilla, for all her experience and effort, had never quite mastered. 3 months after the gala, a formal state dinner was announced. Foreign dignitaries, press coverage, the highest level of royal protocol, and both Kate and Camilla would be expected to attend. The palace communications team worked overtime to prepare. Seating arrangements were debated. Photo opportunities were choreographed. Every detail was scrutinized to ensure unity, dignity, and poise. Officer Mitchell was assigned to the main reception hall. He arrived early, watching staff arrange flowers, polish silverware, Just lighting, Kate arrived first for the preliminary briefing. She wore a deep green gown, elegant and understated. Her jewelry was minimal diamond earrings, simple bracelet. No sapphires. Camilla arrived 20 minutes later, dressed in champagne silk with a pearl choker. She greeted Kate cordially. They discussed the evening's schedule, who would greet which guests, when speeches would occur. On the surface, everything appeared normal, professional, but Officer Mitchell had learned to read the spaces between words. The careful politeness that masked deeper currents. As guests began arriving, both women moved into their roles seamlessly. Handshakes, warm greetings, practiced conversations about trade agreements and cultural exchanges. Photographers captured every moment. Kate and Camilla standing side by side, smiling, presenting the image of unity the institution required. But during dinner, something unexpected happened. One of the foreign dignitaries, a woman who had worked with Diana years ago on landmine awareness, was seated near Kate. She began sharing stories, memories of Diana's wit. Her warmth, her determination. The table fell quiet. Listening, she had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room, the dignitary said. Even with cameras everywhere, with protocol and pressure, she never forgot to see the human being in front of her. She turned to Kate. Remind me of her. Not in appearance, but in presence. In purpose. Kate smiled, genuinely touched. That's one of the kindest things anyone has ever said to me. Across the table, Camilla sat perfectly still, her wine glass frozen halfway to her lips. The conversation moved on. Other topics emerged, but the moment had landed. Later, during the reception, Officer Mitchell watched Camilla excuse herself. She walked to a quiet alcove near the east windows, out of sight from most guests. He shouldn't have followed. It wasn't his place. But something made him check. Some instinct that she might need. He wasn't sure what. She was standing alone, staring out at the gardens, her shoulders tense. "Ma'am," he said quietly from a respectful distance. "Is everything all right?" She didn't turn. "Do you know what it's like, Officer Mitchell, to spend your entire life being compared to someone who isn't here to be less than perfect?" He didn't answer. "It wasn't really a question. I've worked so hard," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've earned respect, built relationships, served with dedication. But it will never be enough, because she's frozen in time as the people's princess, and I'm just the other one." "With respect, ma'am," Officer Mitchell said carefully, "I don't think that's what people see anymore." "No." She finally turned to look at him. "What do they see?" "Someone who kept showing up, even when it was hard, even when the comparisons were cruel. That takes a different kind of courage." Camilla studied him for a moment, then offered a sad smile. "You're kind to say so." "I'm saying what I've observed, ma'am," she nodded, straightening her shoulders. "I should return to the reception." "Yes, ma'am." She walked back into the light and noise and performance, and Officer Mitchell returned to his post. But something had shifted in him, too. He had spent years seeing these people as symbols, as roles, as titles. Tonight, he had seen two women carrying weights no crown could balance. The state dinner ended without incident. The photographs were perfect. The press coverage was positive. Another successful royal event added to the record. But in the days that followed, Officer Mitchell noticed something changing. Camilla began taking on different projects. Less traditional ceremonial duties, more substantive work. She launched an initiative on domestic violence awareness. She visited women's shelters, speaking with survivors, listening to their stories without cameras present. The work was real, unglamorous. Important, Kate. Meanwhile, continued her own path. Her foundation grew. Her public appearances drew crowds. She balanced her role with authenticity that seemed effortless, though Officer Mitchell suspected it was anything but. One morning, nearly 6 months after the necklace incident, both women found themselves at the same hospital opening. It hadn't been planned, a scheduling error that no one had caught in time. Officer Mitchell was assigned to the event, expecting tension, careful choreography, maintained distance. Instead, he witnessed something different. They arrived separately, greeted the hospital director separately, toward different wings. But in the children's ward, they ended up in the same room. A little girl, maybe 7 years old, was showing Kate a drawing she'd made. "It's a princess," the girl explained. "She helps people when they're scared." Kate knelt down. "That's beautiful. What's her superpower?" "She makes people feel brave." "I think that's the best superpower there is." Camilla, who had been speaking with a nurse nearby, overheard the exchange. She approached slowly. "May I see?" she asked the little girl gently. The child held up the drawing shyly. "This is wonderful," Camilla said. "You know, I think real princesses don't need magic powers. They just need to care about people. Like you clearly do." The girl beamed. Kate and Camilla's eyes met over the child's head, and for just a moment, the history between them, the comparisons, the competition, the complicated hurt seemed less important than the moment they were sharing. They spent the next 20 minutes in that ward together, talking with children, meeting families, being present in a way that transcended protocol. Photographers captured it. The images showed to women working together, genuinely engaged. The headlines were different this time. Not about conflict or comparison, but about partnership, about shared purpose. It wasn't perfect. They would never be close friends. Too much history stood between them. Too many wounds that hadn't fully healed. But they had found something else. A kind of professional respect. An understanding that they were both trying, in their own ways, to honor something larger than themselves. Officer Mitchell watched it all from his position by the door, and he thought about the night of the gala, about Kate's sapphire necklace and Camilla's frozen smile. That moment had been a turning point. Not the end of their story, but the beginning of something new. Kate had made her statement, claimed her connection to Diana's legacy, positioned herself as a bridge between past and future, and Camilla had learned that she didn't need to compete with that legacy. She needed to build her own. The necklace had told a story, but it wasn't the whole story. The whole story was two women learning to coexist in an impossible institution, learning that strength didn't always mean winning. That legacy wasn't a competition. That sometimes the bravest thing you could do was simply keep showing up, even when the comparisons were painful, even when the path was unclear, even when a ghost wore sapphires and everyone remembered her smile. Officer Mitchell returned to his duties, watching over both women as they continued their hospital visit, separate but no longer quite so divided, and he understood that this was what the monarchy really looked like up close. Not perfect, not always fair, but human, complicated and trying, and sometimes, on good days, getting it almost right. The necklace was back in the vault now, but what it had revealed remained, and that, more than any jewels, was the real treasure worth protecting.